Hello, everyone. So I think the primary divide between me and casual players, and I know this might upset some people, and I'm sorry, but I just have to say it, is that casual players, something happens, whether it be mundane or funny, and then both players hit killbinds, and then everyone laughs. I'm sorry, I just don't get it. I don't think that kill binding just makes the perfect punchline and it's just immediately funny. But maybe I hate fun. I don't know. But yeah, I do want to talk about kill binding because it is actually something that is competitively useful, oddly enough. That's very counterintuitive because in a game like Sixes, where there's, again, only 6 players per team, every dead player matters a lot. So in a format where your life matters a lot and you want to be living, then why would you ever be intentionally pressing a button to instantly kill yourself? So that's what we're going to talk about. So first I want to talk about, let's talk about add and disadd. So of course the entire game revolves around Ubers and Uber advantages and disadvantages. And a very common add to see is 40%. And why 40%? Well, when one team uses an Uber and kills a medic during that Uber slightly before or slightly after, then it usually turns out to roughly 40 add because the entire duration of the dead medic's respawn timer, the other team is spent building their Uber. And that usually turns out to about 40%. So 40% is usually a rule of thumb that you use in those kinds of scenarios, right? Now, of course, this might be more or less depending on how well one team builds Uber over the other, and Uber building is its own super in-depth topic. I'm sure I could talk about it for half an hour or something. But we're going to go with 40% as a rule of thumb. Now, let's imagine a situation in which a medic is dead to rights. Let's imagine it is after a mid-fight, and everyone on the retreating medic's team has died. They are alone. They don't have a scout to latch onto and get scout speed and get out. They are completely alone, and not only that, but the other team is very obviously catching them, and they have no way to get out. So, in a case like this, what actually might be optimal for the team catching the med, it would be something that we call petting the med, where you actually intentionally don't kill them, because the longer that med stays alive, or rather, the later that med dies, the later that med is going to spawn. So if you're trying to play a mid to last type of situation where you win the mid fight so decisively you kill the enemy medic, you get second, and now you have add into last. If you're trying to play a mid to last situation like this, then it would make sense to delay that medic's death as much as possible. And in some extreme cases, you might be able to push last before that medic spawns or as that medic spawning. Meaning, not only is there 0% chance you have to worry about them getting Uber in a post-Uber fight after you've used into last or something, you can take that fight as slow as you want without them getting. But players aren't going to be buffed, they're not going to be as healthy, and your odds of winning that push dramatically go up as a result. So it might be optimal to prevent the medic, or to stop trying to kill the medic as fast as possible. Make sure they can't get out and survive, and that's it. Just pet the medic, right? So in a case like this, if you're a medic and you know that you're dead to rights, you know you're going to die, then the optimal play would actually be to killbind and end up spawning sooner than you would have otherwise if they pet you, or even if they killed you regardless. Because, you know, for example, a scout chasing you down, a lot of the time that scout's just going to want to kill you. They might not be trying to pet you or whatever. But even in that case, it's probably worth dying even a second and a half sooner than they would kill you, because in some cases that might make a big difference. And that's where I talk now about how spawns work in this game, because it's kind of interesting. So I know there's kind of a meme explanation in Super Mario Brothers speedrunning of the kind of frame rule, because when you advance levels, you know, the bus stop analogy, right, where essentially the next level is loaded in like concrete stages. So if you make it by 1 frame or make it by 5 frames, it won't make a difference to how soon you load into the next level. And spawns in TF2 function the same way, where they spawn in waves. So 2 players could die multiple seconds apart from each other, but as long as one is in the low end of a wave and the other's in a high end, they will actually respawn at the exact same time. So when it comes to, for example, a killbind, even saving a second or something might end up saving you upwards of 8 seconds of respawn time if that second bumped you over to another respawn wave, right? Which is really important because obviously you want to spawn as fast as possible if you know you're going to die anyway. So that would be the optimal thing to do. And this isn't just exclusive to Medic. Really any important class. Like, you don't really see demos killbind that often, but my inspiration for making this actually was watching an invite demo playing, and they were killbinding a couple times when they knew they were going to die. And demo is such an important class to have in a defensive situation because you can have traps up, especially on last. Trapping the point is just so important. So yeah, there is legitimate value in killbinding as a demo if you know that you're going to die anyway. Just as a means to get on a faster spawn wave and to potentially, you know, for that defensive fight that you need to take, be ready for it. So yeah, there are cases where killbinding might be optimal. And on the topic of spawn waves, a format in which spawn waves matter a lot, well, we can actually continue talking about 5CP and spawn waves, because a common strategy you see in order to turn a convincing win on one point into pushing the next point, even when Ubers are not a consideration, is with denying spawns. Because of course, of course, when the other team, or when a team has control of mid, they get forward spawns. They spawn further forward than the last that they initially spawned on. And if they get second, they spawn even further forward. So, and look at here, I'm getting a forward spawn right now. So even with consideration to forward spawns, if one team caps a point, as in they cap their own second or they cap mid, while players on the other team are dead, those players that would have been spawning in forward spawns are now spawning further back and much further away from the next point forward. Meaning, if you, for example, get 3 kills on mid, pushing into mid, and then you stack the midpoint and cap it before those 3 players spawn, then instead of those players spawning on second, like they would with a forward spawn with them having control of mid, they instead spawn on last, way further away from second and way less equipped to take that fight. As in, you get to immediately push that point off the fact that you have 3 picks, take really good positioning really quickly, and usually just hold that point. So even with Ubers out of the way, just playing off those spawn waves and being able to deny a spawn wave with multiple players, suddenly you get to take new ground if you're quick about it. So understanding spawn waves and understanding how spawning works is quite important in 5CP. And another really important game mode with regards to spawn waves is King of the Hill. So in Koth, it's oh man, that is crazy. Wait, I already used this demo for my lock and load video, didn't I? I remember that moment. Sorry, the 64-bit update broke PREC, so I like don't have current demos to use. I kind of just skip around and pick whatever. Anyway, so with Koth, one of the principal quirks about the game mode is the fact that the team with control of the point has longer spawn timers than the team without control of the point. And not only that, but these spawn timers are retroactively applied, meaning if you have players that are on a spawn timer, so let's say your soldier is spawning in 4 seconds and you cap, rather than spawning in 4 seconds, because keep in mind that was on the fast timer, they now get applied to the slow timer, and you might delay them for however long, maybe another like few seconds, which again, in a fast-paced game like TF2, a few seconds matters a lot. So it's not uncommon in Koth to see teams actually avoid capping the point even when they have it for free in order to let their players spawn sooner and then they cap. And it's usually called denying players when you put them on a longer timer by capping. And for that matter, denying forwards as well is what it's called in 5CP when you cap to prevent them from spawning in forwards. And yeah, another classic example of spawn waves mattering a lot in Koth is with sacking. So because the kind of game objective of Koth is so different than 5CP, because it's more so about time in Koth than it is about space and control like 5CP, whether you win or lose a fight has less to do with the actual picks or space or whatever that you get and more to do with the point and how much time you get, because it's not uncommon to see very, very chaotic Koth games where both teams are just kind of wiping back and forth, and players are dying all over the place. But if one team has the point capped this entire duration, then it strictly benefits them, because they are the ones actually making progress this whole time, despite the insane fighting that's happening might suggest the contrary. No, they are the only ones making progress. So, with that in mind, a common strategy when it's AddDisad is to 4-man sack. And there's a couple reasons for this. I could make an entire video about 4-manning, honestly, because it is a pretty nuanced topic. But essentially, like, what you're looking for, or what your options are to either get your Uber so that you can actually fight the point, because it's kind of impossible to fight and cap the point against a team that's actually contesting it if they have an Uber and you don't, because you can't commit your heals forward, otherwise they'd be caught, and then it's just disad for even longer. And you can't adequately fight the point without your heals committed forward. So if you can't really fight the point, then what are you going to do? Well, you could just build the Uber, which is a bunch of time wasted while you're doing nothing. So you may as well, during that time while you're building, just sack everyone, and then everyone spawns, and then with 4 players sacking, that's a really decent chance of forcing an enemy med, assuming they're not ready for it, which again, suddenly there's just a whole depth of play and counterplay with regards to a team expecting a 4-man. How much do you contest point? Because if you contest point, you might be committing your heals out more in order to be more vulnerable to 4-man, etc., etc. So again, there's insane amounts of depth to just basic decisions like this, but it's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about spawn waves. So in a 4-man situation, however, a lot of the time it is optimal to die quickly. And in fact, if I am playing in a 4-man situation and I'm bombing in, and before I even land, I hear someone on my team call that the med forced, boom, I instantly, because that was the objective of the bomb, right, is to force the med. I instantly know, okay, we got what we wanted. I don't even have to worry about what I do. I just want to die as fast as possible, pretty much. Like, if I can get kills or do anything, that's fantastic. But I'm just going to run at a person and try and kill them or die, because I want to die faster in that situation, because the faster I die, the more likely it is that I get on the same spawn wave as my team. And if I get a later spawn wave, then that's just a few seconds later that my team can fight, because they're going to wait until everyone spawns to fight anyway. So you may as well make that as soon as possible. And in a game mode like Koth, sometimes those couple seconds matter a lot, actually. So yeah, a common mistake that you see in a 4-man situation is a player choosing to live for a little bit. If they lived entirely, it's fine, because they're alive, right? And they can take the fight from if they're behind or something, or just regroup with the team. But if they live a bit longer but still die, then it's really bad, because they're delaying their death so much that suddenly your team is now given the uncomfortable decision of, do we take this fight while down one, or do we just wait for them, which might be quite a bit longer, like upwards of 10 plus seconds longer. So yeah, I think that's probably all I have to talk about spawn waves. It's a really interesting concept in sixes, and it leads to some kind of counterintuitive decisions where you would expect to want to be living for as long as you can and as much as you can all the time, which 90% of the time you are looking to do that, but there are certain very niche circumstances with spawn waves in consideration, dying faster, and sometimes dying by pressing a killbind is actually optimal, which is kind of interesting. So I figured I would talk about that, something that people might not be so familiar with. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that. Hope it was interesting, and maybe it was a good sleep aid as well. But I will see you guys next time.